What if Sukuna had eaten his final finger? Would he have been at 21 fingers worth of strength? Let's talk about it, but spoilers beware. Okay, first of all, shout out to Sam for inspiring this video today. And just as a little bit of context, we've been talking about this in a couple of recent videos. I did a whole video talking about just how strong Sukuna was at the end of the series. And then I did a short talking about whether or not he was at 19 or 20 fingers of strength. So I'm not going to get into all of the nitty gritty on those subjects again. And instead, I'm just going to specifically address this question here, because the short version is I think Sukuna was at full strength, at 20 fingers, at his maximum potential walking into that Gojo fight. And yet we know there was one final finger out there still, the one that Gojo hid in order to spare Yuji from his execution, right? So Sam says, well, under that case, what would have happened had Sukuna eaten that final finger? Would he have been boosted up to 21 fingers worth of strength? Or is there a ceiling on how many fingers worth of power he could have? How is this determined? And also, how does eating his corpse fulfill the requirements for restoring his strength when it wasn't made with the specific cursed object procedure that made the original fingers? Okay, so the first thing to understand is that no one knows what each finger quantifiably gives to Sukuna when he consumes it. We don't know how they enhance his strength. Like, are they giving him just more of his cursed energy to access? Are they amplifying his domain refinement? Do they increase his physical stats? We don't know, and anyone claims that they know is being disingenuous because those specifics were never addressed in the series, right? All we know is that he split himself into 20 cursed objects, and in order to regain his full strength, he needs to regain all of those cursed objects, right? So if we just operate based on that, then you would assume, okay, he needs all 20 to reach full power. So why do I think he reached full power with only 19? Well, it's because of this scene right here where he says, eating my corpse will make up for that final finger. So because of this statement, we now have more information on how this process works. And it's coming from the most reliable source here. So whatever of his essence, whatever you want to consider that final finger would have meant in the puzzle piece of his full strength, Sukuna is saying that this corpse is a viable substitute for that. Now, how does that work on a mechanical world building level? Well, we could insert any number of things, right? It could be that this was his original body. This was the basis from which those other pieces were made. And there's enough of it to satisfy, again, substituting for one of those pieces. An analogy you could kind of think of would be like, let's say you ordered a 20-piece nugget, right? But they only gave you 19. And you know what? You're still hungry after eating 19, being like, oh, I still wish I had that one more. And so instead of eating that one nugget, though, you're going to eat the cheeseburger that your friend didn't eat. And you're like, okay, I'm going to eat this cheeseburger. Oh, now I'm full. That nugget's still out there, but eating it would do nothing because you have already been satiated by something else. So what would have happened had he eaten that 20th finger? Nothing, in my opinion, at least not in terms of regaining himself and his strength, because he had already capped out on that. And you can't really go over that, if that makes sense. He can't more than 100% regain who he was because he already regained who he was. And just to be clear, I'm not saying that there couldn't exist a conception where he could have gone over, but that clearly wasn't the system that Gege was portraying to us because, again, of that panel he gave with the corpse, because there was never any indication at all from anyone that he wasn't at full strength. And in fact, it was the opposite. This was the pinnacle battle between the two strongest that both men had been waiting forever for. Let's just take a look at Excuses McGee right here, okay? Uraume was letting Hikari know that, like, hey, you guys only won because of a fluke. Like, the only reason you beat Sukuna was because he was an incarnated sorcerer and y'all could capitalize on this whole soul business. But if he had been in his original body, he would have clapped all of y'all, right? There was no mention of, oh, hey, you know, by the way, Sukuna was only at 19 out of 20. Like, he wasn't even at full power. Like, y'all shouldn't be patting yourselves on the back. And in fact, that point, like I mentioned, was never brought up anywhere, and there was ample opportunity for it to be brought up. Sukuna could have used it in his trash talk during the Gojo fight. Gojo could have reflected on that specifically in the afterlife when he was like, man, you know, I wish I could have given Sukuna more. He wasn't even at 20 fingers. fingers, right? But no, he never says that because, again, it wasn't supposed to be something that readers walked away with. You were supposed to assume that Sukuna was at full strength because he ate his corpse. Now, as to why the corpse can satisfy filling that final puzzle piece when the finger's still out there, like isn't a part of Sukuna's soul in that finger, so how could he be complete without it? Sure, that is one framework to look at it in, but again, this scene lets us know that that's just not how it works. And again, this is his full ass body here, right? The fingers were made from this. He didn't even know this existed originally, right? He didn't know that his body was basically deified and kept up over the past 1,000 years. So you could assume that his soul was in this as well. And he doesn't have his full soul. The finger's still out there. If he had eaten the finger and he never ate the body, he could have eaten the body to go over his strength. And that's just not how the system works, right? And again, it's not even really up for question because Sukuna says this can easily make up for one finger's worth of power. It's not this will probably suffice. It's no, pure confidence. And this is because I think Gege Akutami wanted to make it clear that that is not a plot relevant point here. Sukuna is at full strength. The only reason a finger was kept aside was for completely separate plot threads. Again, because Gojo wanted to stay off Yuji's execution, but also the whole Nobara moment, which obviously centered around that finger. Gege kind of wanted to have his cake and eat it too, so he needed to have one separate, but he also wanted to have Sukuna full strength coming into the most climactic fight of his series, so he inserted this. Okay, he'll eat the corpse, that way he can still be full power, I can still have my finger moments. Boom. Honestly, in the discussions I've seen since we've been talking about this in my comment sections and also other places on the internet, I feel like this just really boils down to whether you view JJK with power scaling glasses on or you view it with narrative glasses on, because I promise you that most authors are not considering the nuance of power scaling in online debates when they are crafting their story. They're more concerned with the narrative itself. And when you look at this through that lens, I feel like it's very easy to see why Gege had these moments the way he did. Again, I don't want to just straight up repeat myself, but clearly there were reasons and plot threads for him to keep a final finger separate. And yet, of course, he wanted to have his two strongest characters in the most climactic battle of the series be going head to head at full strength. So we insert this scene with him to eat the corpse in order to satisfy that. Have your cake and eat it too. And just to be clear, I'm not saying that it's not possible for there to exist a version of this where he wasn't at full strength and that final finger would have boosted him even further. That obviously could have existed, but if that was the case, and that was the implication Gege Akutami wanted us to walk away from, just don't include this at all, because then you have that, right? So you have to think to yourself, why would Gege even have this moment if that's what he wanted us to think? When I sat down to record this video, I was like, okay, we'll make a short 1 minute, 2 minutes max. I can kind of just wrap up my thoughts on this subject since we've been talking about it for a few videos now. But nope, here we are 8 minutes later. So thank you guys for making it this far in the video if you did. But hopefully now you guys can at least understand my perspective on this, where I'm coming from, and why I believe that Sukuna was at full strength. It doesn't mean you have to agree with me, but that's my 2 cents. So Sam, thank you again for the inspiration for this video, and thank you guys so much for watching.